welcome to the 10th anniversary of the Ashley Forest Rally Sprint on what is a beautiful, fine, balmy North Canterbury day. Co-commentating with us again is Trevor Crowe. And Trevor, I think this is the most amazing assortment of machinery we've ever seen here, isn't it?
Yes, we've got overseas interest, we've got the locals, and we've got the weirdest selection of homegrown cars I've seen for a while.
Obviously, Rodney Mullen's still the favourite.
Has to be, really. It's a professional car, he's a professional engineer, and he's done a great job with it.
But aren't viewers going to see some entertaining machinery and some odd hybrids?
Yes, and a few aerodynamic aids that I haven't seen before. Yes, it'll be a great weekend.
There's the outright favourite, Rod Mullen, the four-wheel drive RX-7 space frame 300 horsepower special. Ray Wilson in the Mazda 323 four-wheel drive turbo, second last year. Possum Bourne in the Subaru RX four-wheel drive, last year's winner here. Barry Robinson in the Chevette 2.3-litre two-wheel drive with huge aerofoils. Trev Parmenter in the 323 mid-engine with a Skyline turbo engine and four-wheel drive. Hugh and Lloyd Owen in the Mitsubishi VR4 four-wheel drive, both very experienced. Chris Barnes in the Renault 5 turbo, rear-engined and two-wheel drive. Neil Allport in the Mazda 323 four-wheel drive turbo, the 83 winner here. And Stuart Weber in the Subaru RX turbo four-wheel drive in very hot rally form this year. Let's have a look at the course now in graphic form. The first part of it is uphill, 1.7 kilometres the length of it. The tricky bit is just in there with that series of bends before you get to the hairpin, which is the one that most drivers at some time have got wrong. Now we're on downhill, a very broad sweeper there, and right down to the finish line about there. And only one man has ever gone under 1 minute. Let's have a look at how he did it.
Okay, go. And got to be real careful off the start line here. We don't get too much wheel spin. Second gear, still wheel spinning a bit. Third gear, got to keep it very straight, very fast up through here. Fourth gear, watch the sun coming in and out of the trees. Fifth gear, now coming up to a quick right. Should be flat through here, off a little bit. Down to fourth. Watch it into third gear. Hard on the gas, or a little sideways. But stay hard on it, all the way up here. No, back into second gear. A little slippery through here. Quick right, hard on it. Oops, a little too sideways. That's it. Back up again straight here. Up to the trickiest corner of them all, the hairpin here. Back into first. Stand on it now. Get the rear out and the head for down the hill. Stay hard on, just wind up all through the gears now. Third gear, up into fourth. Over this little bit of a crest, flat over this crest. Brake a little for the left here. Little slippery still, and hard on the gas. Down here into fifth, just stay hard on the gas all the way down here. You don't have to lift until you get to the finish line.
Let's have a look as he comes down to the line, and we're going to make history at Ashley Forest. We have 59.90. Right. First runner up the hill, Philip Jones of Rotorua in the Ford Escort, a Mark II Escort with a 13B Mazda rotary in it. So plenty of horsepower and not too much weight in the front end of it. On the way up to the hairpin, and he's overdone that. Gets the tail right around and parks it. He'll get it back straight again, but it's going to put him out of contention. He will have lost too much time in getting around there. On the way up to the hairpin, bad luck for Philip Jones. On the way up the hill now, Stuart Weber, who's having an exceptionally good season. The early part of this year, Subaru RX four-wheel drive turbo, it's a Group A car. And Trevor, really his season started off brilliantly well, winning the Blenheim Rally.
Yes, he performed very well there. He's one of the local drivers that's on the way up at the moment, and he's been impressing everybody with his form.
Amazing the number of old heads around the pits who are talking about this fellow as one of the young chargers. One of the good places to see them is on this hill because it's pressure, and those who can respond to it and put a performance on the line when it's absolutely necessary are the guys that end up being good rally drivers.
Yeah, some of these rally sprint drivers don't always make good rally drivers, and vice versa, because this is a very quick event and you have to dial yourself in instantly, but he seems to be good at both.
We wouldn't expect him to be in with the top end of competitors, and you can see from the time coming down there that he's not going to be close to the minute mark. Not a bad run in that car with a lack of horsepower. 1.836 will certainly get him into the 16. Here's Dave Ayling on the course now. Excellent driver, Dave Ayling, in the 323 four-wheel drive turbo. One of many in the event. And I think nowadays when you go to National Round Rally Championships, it's about the first 10 cars of these wonderful little Mazdas. They really have made the job a lot easier for a lot of drivers, I think, Trevor.
Yes, they're relatively relatively cheap, really, for a rally car. These days you can't spend 60 or 70,000. These cars don't cost that much. And because they're becoming increasingly available from Japan at the right sort of money, more and more guys are getting into them.
We're down over the minute there now already and down towards the finish line. We'd expect about 105 from him. He's a little off that. 1:6.86 for Dave Ayling, and that should put him safely through. Now this is a fascinating car. This is Trev Parmenter from Timaru, and the Mazda, which has got a Nissan, used to have a 240 RS motor mid-mounted. Now it's got a Skyline motor, turbo, mid-mounted, and his own four-wheel drive system. It is amazing, and he's a very good peddler, very brave, and the speeds he gets round here in a car that doesn't look like it should do the job, he won't do it this time because he's just spun it. So just 25 seconds up the hill, and he got a little over-exuberant there, and he's managed to spin it. We'll get another look at that in a moment, but Trev Parmenter has overdone it. Luckily, he has another round, and he has time to fix that damage.
It's lucky he did spin it there, Tony, because if he'd gone over the edge, there's a few gone down that hole, and it's a roll or two before you stop, usually.
Just have a look at it again from this helicopter angle. And as Trevor said, it's not the sort of place that you'd want to do other than spin it round because it's a long way down there. He's going to be able to repair the damage, and he'll be back in next round, we think. Another of the four-wheel drive Subaru turbos. This is Robert Hart from Nelson. Another of the upcoming drivers that's been picked as one of the better rally drivers in the country for future years, Robbie Hart. He's had 8 years in the sport, and he does this little circuit very, very well indeed. I remember here last year that he was one of the quickest of all the cars here at getting off the line in about the first 100 metres there. I think, Trevor, the weight of the Subaru helps that.
Yes, well, it's a four-wheel drive, of course, is so wonderful off the line. All the wheels are working, and regardless of horsepower or weight or anything else, if you've got four wheels working instead of two, you've got a big advantage off the line. And that's the place where the four-wheel drives make their most. From the start and round this hairpin, as they come out of there now, all those wheels are working.
Not a particularly quick split at the top. It should bring him down in about 106, 107.
He's another driver that's gone from two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive just recently, and there is a little bit of difference between them in the driving style. But, most of the guys adapt quite quickly.
Down towards the finish line now, and it's 1:08.58, so not a particularly fast downhill either. He's going to need to pick up the pace before the next round. We'll take a break and be back with more Rally Sprint in just a moment.
Running in a minute 4 in his V8-powered Starlet circuit car, adding fuel to the traditional rally car versus racing car battle on this hill, started by Paul Adams and Reg Cook back in '81.
1:4.72, new course record.
Auckland's Tony Teasdale was the winner in '87, driving the then state-of-the-art Metro 6R4 four-wheel drive rally car. Conditions that year were wet and misty with rather poor visibility, making this the ideal car. Nobody yet had got close to breaking a minute, and nobody really expected that they would.
Whatever time he does.
That was until expatriate professional Rod Mullen came home in '88, bringing with him a stunningly well-engineered space-framed RX-7 and four-wheel drive. In just his second run ever at the Dunlop Hill, Mullen shattered the minute barrier and went on to win in 59.14.
That's the second time in the day he's done a 59.14.
Without Mullen last year, times reverted to those of regular human beings, and Possum Bourne won the final from Ray Wilson. Bourne managed to wrestle a lightened turbo Subaru Special around in just over 65 seconds.
Just to win. Who has recorded a time of 1:10.74 in the Mitsubishi Galant VR4 RS Turbo, which has a CC rating of 3395 when you multiply its normal 2 litres by 1.7 for the turbo factor. Confused? A lot of people.
Some people may remember this car from some television exposure through the January series when there was a little bit of rallying going on during some circuit racing when the Owen brothers were running.
It looks big and heavy and cumbersome, but it actually gets the job done very well. They have amazing torque, these Mitsubisis, the VR4. I remember watching one of the Japanese drivers in the International last year and going through the same corner as several of the little Mazdas and spun the wheels and screamed their heads off to get away from. This thing just grunted and went. Very quick off the mark.
It doesn't actually look all that spectacular, but it's doing reasonably good times. Although it's a fairly heavy car, it's fairly stable, and these two guys are very experienced. They're actually a couple of characters. You never quite know what they're going to be up to next.
They're more experienced in practical jokes, I think, than driving, aren't they?
It could be right.
Dangerous thing to interview either of them live. 1:10, 1:4. For Hugh Owen, not much of an improvement there. Good old car that still looks as good as the day it came out. Howdy Quattro, four-wheel drive turbo. You may have seen in the hands of drivers like Michel Mouton, Hunter Mikula. Some of the best rally drivers in the world have made a name for themselves in these things. Weren't they a superb car and state-of-the-art when they came out, Trevor?
Well, I seem to remember they were amongst the first four-wheel drives that we really saw, and although they're sort of a bit big and heavy looking these days, they were absolutely state-of-the-art in their day. And they're still very, very quick. They've got a lot of horsepower. And 5 cylinders, believe it or not.
Yeah, an unusual configuration.
Ryan's won a lot of rallies in his time. He goes back running as long as I do. I remember him in an Escort when I was running a Datsun 1200 many, many years ago.
Very hard car to drive right on the limit. Many of the top drivers who've had them over the years have said that it really is an art to get to grips with driving it very, very hard. Hear the time as he comes down here. He's had a 1:11 and he's in similar time, 1:11.52 for Brian Greene of Palmerston North.
A lot about the preparation of the car, so you know what goes on to prepare a car for this sort of event.
Four-wheel drive, 3.23. Second last year, beaten by Possum Bourne in the last run. Very, very smooth driver and very experienced. Not much drama happens inside the car with Ray Wilson. Navigated on a couple of events with him when he used to drive minis, and he learned that left foot braking method, which has stood him in good stead when four-wheel drive came along. Basically learned his trade in front drive cars. And I think that in many ways is easier to convert to four-wheel drive, Trevor, than if you started with rear wheel.
Yes, I'm quite sure that's right. The technique is very similar. You can still get the four-wheel drive car sideways. Oh, very wide there. He wouldn't be... No, not too bad coming out of it again.
Seems so good on legs, didn't he?
But I think really it's always been easier to get a rear-wheel drive car around sharp corners like hairpins and things, whereas a front-wheel drive car, you have to keep your foot up it and try and drive it around. Very wide again there. Not a very clean run for him. The times have actually been a bit slower than I expected at this stage of the day's events, but there's a lot of loose shingle on the surface.
That's very unusual. 1:6.66 is a better time than 1:6.89 they did in the previous round. It's still going to be quick enough. Fella you know fairly well, Trevor Crowe. He works for you, doesn't he, Dave Sampson?
Yes, that's right. He's in charge of our suspension and tyre department. And, a very unusual beast, this. It's got a Chrysler Hemi 6-cylinder engine and a Vauxhall Viva body shell. Dave's been campaigning it for 2 or 3 seasons now with a lot of success locally. He runs in the rallies, the rally sprints, the circuit racing, street saloons. He's a good local competitor. He's always there, and he's always driving as hard as he can possibly go.
He's already turned in a 1:12.27, which for rear-wheel drive and this kind of configuration, this kind of hybrid is not bad at all. Must be a handful.
Yes, it is. It's a very heavy motor, although he's got it mounted reasonably well back, and it has got exceptionally good horsepower and torque. He actually goes through differentials in this car at a great rate of knots. I think he's used up about 20 or 30 of them so far while he's been running this car.
This is budget motor racing, and he has a lot of fun. The downhill is going to be hard. As we said, a time already of 1:12.27. I think he'll improve on that by the look of the rate he's coming down the hill. And that's a big improvement. 1:08.26. He's taken 4 seconds off. Dave Sampson of Christchurch. Good run. Performing above himself today, Graham Coey of Christchurch. He's had a 1.735, which puts him way up in the top 5 or 6 there. It's a Subaru RX, four-wheel drive turbo.
Basically, a production car, this, if there is such a thing on this event. It's Group N, which is a modified production car, not as modified as Group A. I don't know how they get the differences there, but Group A is a fairly radical car compared to Group N, which is what this is.
On his way up to approach the hairpin.
Nice tidy lines around there. Good, clean exit out of the corner and getting the power on nice and early. Over that part of the circuit, the car lifts and just about comes off the ground, and then a very difficult fast left-hander there with quite a big bump on the inside in the fastest part of the circuit.
So his own 1.738 to beat. And 1.660, again he's improving. That must be getting to the limits of what that car can do, I think.
That's the second off his time.
This is a young fella on the way up, John Silcock, who comes from just over the hill here at Rangiora, the Mazda RX-3. And he, after 6 years of dirt bike riding, took up rallying last year, and obviously seems to be a natural because he finished second overall in the Mainland Series and won the Autosport Club Championship. Not bad for a first season then, is it?
No, he's another one of these up-and-coming rally guys that really don't have the funds to do it properly, but have a lot of talent. The Buis brothers would be in the same league. He actually has a bit of an advantage over the other people here because he drives up this hill virtually every day in his bee truck to put the hives, the bee hives up the hill a bit further, so he knows the road pretty well.
I hope he doesn't drive the bee truck the same way as he drives this. On good lines and coming down, and for an RX-3, 1.978 is not bad time at all. Here's a man just back from the African Safari Rally. In fact, both of them, Roger Freeth, the co-driver, went with Possenborn. Last year's winner here at the Ashley Forest Rallysprint. And he's brought back not the new car, the new Subaru that's out now, the Legend. This is the old RX, and they've lightened it and got some extra horsepower and spent an awful lot of time trying to get a special right just for this event. He was disappointed with his winning time last year, although he won the event. It was only 65 seconds, and he feels that this car can go quicker than that. There aren't many bits of metal left in the panels.
No, it's very lightweight. There's a lot of aluminium and fiberglass and perspex put into these cars to replace the original heavy steel panels, and it does help. The less weight you have to cart up and down the hill and around the corners, the better.
A little later on in the day, we'll be able to show you and listen to Roger Freeth's pace notes. You might think that 1.7 Ks, it's a bit easy, really, for the driver to remember it without a co-driver. But Roger Freeth is a very, very professional co-driver. He feels, and Possum feels, that there is some advantage in having instructions, and so they do it. There are a number of instructions, I think 20 or 30 in all, page and a half, to get around this course. 1.648. It's not much of an improvement, very similar to his first time of the day. We'll be back very shortly at Ash. This is one of the few RX-7s in this year's field. We expect that Kim Austin will be down with another one tomorrow morning, allowed to qualify on the Sunday. This is Rhys Jones from Kerikeri, has a 1.797, so just in the 1.7s.
Yes, I think the RX-7s are gradually getting replaced with the four-wheel drive 323s in terms of local rallies.
This is the ex-Neil Allport RX-7, so it's factory dry sumped and 13B and around 300 plus horsepower. Very well-built car, well-engineered. But it really comes down to just looking at that picture tells a story. Two-wheel drive. And to get around here with that tail-happy style, you have to be extremely brave and talented like Kim Austin, or prepared to take a big punt somewhere on the downhill. Because it's just a matter of being able to get the traction on the ground and translate it into forward motion. Regardless of how much horsepower you've got to propel yourself forward with it.
I think that's one of the reasons some of the two-wheel drives are going to the wings on the back. It definitely helps to get downforce, to get the power on the ground.
1788, and that's not far away from the 1797 he's already done, and possibly again looking at the limits of the car. This is Don Hickman in a car that he's sharing with Stu Murphy. It's an amazing car, an old Hillman Avenger with a Leyland P76 V8 in it, 4.4 litre, and a home-built four-wheel drive system. And they reckon it's got bits and pieces of cars of 5 or 6 different makes and models stuck all over it.
Yes, it's another good example of Kiwi ingenuity, really. It's remarkably effective, and it's great that the locals can actually build four-wheel drive cars and compete with the imported ones.
Leyland P76 has been a popular choice over the years for repowering various things, from Starlets to Avengers. And the Avenger, of course, is a very cheap car to start with, which is one of the reasons, apart from the width of the track and the length of the wheelbase, why people start to build them. 1936 is pretty respectable too, from 1991. Here's the fella they've all come to see, my old mate Rod Mullen, with his son Reese, sitting in the navigator's seat in the four-wheel drive RX-7. It's not a turbo, it is listed as a turbo, but this is actually carburetted. 13B peripheral port, carburetted, 300 horsepower, and just the most beautiful piece of engineering you've ever seen. Rod Mullen has 5 RX-7s in his California workshop, and he prefers this to all of them to drive. This is his favourite car.
It's a credit to this event, actually, that Rod comes out here to do it. I was talking to him earlier today, and he said it's so much fun, and he enjoys coming out and competing here so much that he just likes to come back. And if he stays on form and the car stays on form, there's really nobody that is in the same sort of class in terms even of driving ability. Rod is so smooth and so professional and so good at this job, and his car, of course, is one of the best here.
It's space frame. If you went and had a very close look at it, there's not much RX-7 left. Even the outer panels are copies. But he's the only man that's ever been under a minute here. He's had a 101 already today, just to put it up, and there's a sub-minute round. 59.58. And he made that look pretty easy, didn't he? As promised, an insight into co-driving. This is Dr. Roger Freeth, co-driving with Possum Bourne. Let's have a listen in to his instructions.
30 to right 6, flip left 3, 4, don't cut. Long right 3, long right 3, 30 into a left 4, 5, long left 4, 5, keep in, flip right 1, flip right 1. 41 to there. Long right 6, 7, opens over crest, into a straight 7 crest, 30 to a right 7, left 5, 40, long right 7, tightens over the crest to a left 8, to a long right 6 past the finish. Right 6 past the finish.
Some of it you can understand, some of it's double Dutch, obviously, but that's what they do every run. Now just look at this vehicle. The next shot of it. Absolutely amazing, the wings on here. The one on the front used to be on the back last year, but he's put it on the front, put another one on the back. Barry Robinson from Wyndham and Southland in the Vauxhall Chevette 2.3. And normally he has to dust it out and get the chickens out of it from last year's event. He doesn't do anything else with it in between. And this year, he tells me, he's gone and lashed out. He bought a second-hand ex-post office Bedford motor and redid the engine. He has a lot of fun here, and he is always very, very competitive. I don't think he's failed to make the top 8 yet.
And believe it or not, those wings actually work. He tells me that he can alter the handling of the car by the angle of the wings, and the front one definitely puts more downforce on the front and cuts out some understeer. So there you are, it's worth it all.
And the clock will tell you a story in just a moment. Barry Robinson has a 1:8.51, and there's a 1:5, 3 seconds off. Good time for Barry Robinson. And really, Robinson has left them with a little bit of credibility to save for themselves now, posting a 1:5.08. This is Steve Murphy. He's had a best of 1:7.98 in the Avenger four-wheel drive V8. Doesn't look very fast from there, does it? That's because it stopped. Steve Murphy having a wonderful time picking up the bits and pieces as he goes with this car back down the line. Some of the bits that fell out or fell off on the way off the start line. It's rolling back, the car is, and so far he's got almost a handful of components. I don't know what he's going to do. He'll have to get an apron and put a loop in it to hold him, I think. He might need a sugar sack. Neil Allport on the track now, the 1983 winner of this event, at which time he wasn't driving a 323 Mazda. They weren't really invented, this model then. He was running a BDA Escort. He certainly knows the course very well. He's had a 1.651 already today. Has a co-driver who's very interesting too, perhaps better known for motorcycles than cars, Bob Haldane, but has become a very good co-driver and a very trusty friend with Neil Allport in the passenger seat. Normally a fairly tidy driver, Neil Allport, although quite aggressive. He's adapted to the four-wheel drive fairly well too. Gets around nice and tight. Not a very quick split time though. He's had a 1.6, and this is on target for a similar one, Trevor, I think, unless he can have an awfully fast downhill.
Yes, there seems to be more loose surface than I remember at this point last year, and the times are not as quick as I expected. The other thing is the sun keeps peeping out, and there's been a bit of discussion as to how bad the sun is going to be up at the top of the hill later.
Hey, that's a good downhill. 1.504, that's a super downhill for Neil Allport. In this forest, the gradient is quite deceptive. You need horsepower. I spoke to one of the leading competitors, Ray Wilson, about the lack of it.
Well, you've got to have a car that has a very good all-round package, and that includes the tyres, the brakes and the suspension. And those little things can add up to, you know, a couple of seconds around the hill, and that helps compensate for the lack of horsepower. But at the end of the day, you still need an awful lot to succeed.
Is it frustrating not having enough horsepower?
Yes, it is a little bit, yeah. Because we know we can do the job. We're just driving the car to the best of its ability and my own.
Is there anywhere on this course that you can actually make up some time, like on the downhill?
Yes, you can probably push the car a little bit harder, but it still has to come out of the corners quicker than the opposition, and a car that handles as well as yours and has more power can get down the straight quicker. So you're always up against it a little bit, so you end up at the end of the day taking a few more risks.
This is Gary Cliff on the course now from Christchurch. He's had a 1.908 Subaru RX four-wheel drive turbo. He also drives a Corolla in the National Round Rallies. And this actually is quite an interesting car. It's the Subaru that finished 12th overall in the 1987 RAC World Championship Rally. So in its day, it's been a well-prepared, well-built car. Gary Cliff with 17 years of rallying experience.
Gary's a car dealer from Christchurch, and he actually supports quite a lot of motorsport locally. He sponsors some of the younger drivers in both rallying and circuit racing. Very helpful because it's hard to get sponsorship. He was actually saying earlier that it's been quite hard to adapt from the rear-wheel drive Corolla he ran last weekend to this four-wheel drive Subaru, because the handling characteristics are different.
It's a problem that a lot of drivers have had in the recent years, isn't it, with the advent of everybody running four-wheel drive. Coming down to that line, he's on 1.5, 1.6. He's got 1.9 his own time to beat 1.942. He has improved. No, he hasn't. Just slightly off the pace and having some trouble stopping. Gary Cliff of Christchurch. He has stopped. Just. Here's Chris Barnes on the line, the man who was fourth in last year's 1989 Dunlop Rallysprint. You may remember that he rolled over quite spectacularly in that event. The Renault 5 Turbo, mid-engined or rear-engined, and only two-wheel drive. But doesn't he make it go, Trevor Crow?
It's a very effective little car. It's only 1400cc, but it's got a very big turbocharger on it. It's fuel injected. It runs Renault gear right through. The gearbox and other parts are still Renault, but it's amazingly effective little vehicle, mostly because most of the weight is over the driving wheels. The engine's right at the back.
Now, they say the camera never lies, but that, in the words of Kylie Mole, is full. It's not nearly as light as it looks there. Really quite dark for the drivers, particularly when they get in under the canopy of some of these trees.
They've actually had a little delay in proceedings while the sun got down out of the eyes of the drivers, and now it's gone to the other problem, and they've got the darkness to contend with.
That's something of an indication going through there of how dark it is becoming as we get down to the last runners in this round to qualify the 32. Coming down to the line now, Chris Barnes, very much a competitor, and that's a good time, 1:8.78. His previous was 1:10.42. That puts him in well and truly. So that's what the front end of the qualifying field looks like. Rod Mullen is still 5 seconds quicker than anyone else, and still the 1:05 the qualifying. Stuart Weber in the Subaru RX four-wheel drive turbo Group A car. Well, one of the things he does is this kind of stadium off-road ute racing. He has seen racing alongside his brother Steve in the Toyota and Rod in the Mazda. Rod in the front, Steve behind. And also at Pikes Peak, the hill climb, second only in motor racing history in the United States to Indianapolis. And this is where the car he's brought here was developed for. Let's just have a look for you at this Ashley Forest. We've seen snow. First to run in the round of 16, Hugh Owen in the Mitsubishi VR4, four-wheel drive and four-wheel steer. Fairly heavy sort of a car. I must admit, Trevor Crowe, I'm fairly surprised at the kind of competitive times they've turned up in this.
Yes, well, I suppose that's that four-wheel drive thing again. The extra weight, you really do need the four wheels working for you. But they're pretty good drivers too. They've had a lot of experience. It's the all-purpose motorsport car, this. You can run it on the circuit, you can run it on the shingle. And they enter everything that they can go for.
And if the snow gets any heavier, I'm sure they're going to appreciate it greatly. Getting a little wide coming out of there.
Too wide, yes. They're very lucky there.
Two brothers driving the car, Hugh and Lloyd Owen from Blenheim. Compete in all kinds of motorsport in this, and they've improved. 1:8.62. Despite the conditions, they have improved. Good run. And following him, Ray Wilson on the line. Man who was second last year, beaten by Possumborn in the final. Very, very smooth driver. The Mazda 323 four-wheel drive turbo. The CC rating that you'll see there, 2720, is the 1600 cc that the engine is in actual capacity, multiplied by 1.7, which is the regulations in Group A. That's what you rate a turbo car at, 1.7 times the engine capacity.
Most of these cars that are really factory-prepared cars have very good visibility in the wet. The wipers work, and they tend to have demisters that work, whereas some of the more homegrown type cars do have quite a lot of visibility problems on this hill. As the sort of heavy breathing goes on as they're working hard. That's a nice tidy line around that corner. Excellent line for a four-wheel drive, because they're quite hard to get the tail out on.
One thing you can say for Ray Wilson, almost always very, very tidy and undramatic, although yesterday he made a liar out of us in one of the practice rounds. He actually made 3 mistakes in the space of a run, which is unheard of. Seems to have got it right today. He's had a 1:6.89, qualified in 1:4.93 into this round. He's not going to do that this time, obviously. 1:5.52 for Ray Wilson. And he's going to need to get quicker. Graham Cowie just appearing in your screen there. And the Subaru RX four-wheel drive turbo in basic great Group N form, which is near enough to standard form. A few modifications to get a little more horsepower just for this event, but he runs it fairly standard throughout the rally season.
He's actually doing very well in what's a fairly production-based car. I didn't expect him to be up this far in the field, and he's obviously doing a good job driving.
Well, the qualifying time of 1:7.74. He was a little off the front too, but still well within that group of 16. Enough to get him in the top 8 on current times, 1:8.22. So he's just backed off a little of his times. Some are getting quicker. He didn't. The man from Danneberg, where they've had all the earthquakes just lately, Malcolm Stewart, the Audi Quattro four-wheel drive turbo. a reasonably quick qualifying time at 1:7.34. And Trevor, you were saying that they think they've found some extra horsepower, a bit more turbo boost.
Yes, they were running not on purpose, but they were low on boost yesterday, and that's a good time at the top, so it's obviously helped. 38 seconds is good. They found another 100 horsepower by getting their boost back again, so they were pretty pleased with that.
That wasn't a bad line around that hairpin. A very long car compared to some of the little Mazdas, and often quite hard to get around tidily at the hairpin. It has often been a problem with this car. That one very, very tight and tidy, and he looks like coming down on a good time here. 7's to beat by his own standards. 7.34, so fairly consistent. Malcolm Stewart in the Audi Quattro, 1:7.34. The other half of the Owen team, this is Lloyd in the mid-team. Not a bad sort of a time for Hugh. He went up first, had a 9 and improved that just slightly into the 8s.
Lloyd gives his age on his little sheet here as 22 years old. Now that makes me feel pretty good, because if he's 22, I must be about the same, because he's been rallying about as long as I have. I'd say it's probably closer to 44 than to 22.
They're both very, very even in this car, aren't they?
Yes, they are. It's probably really they get similar amount of mileage in the car, and I guess really it's just similar abilities.
9.2, that's a repeat of the earlier time coming into the round. 1:9.20. Last year's winner, Possum Bourne. You're wondering, I know, where the name Possum came from. Many years ago when he got his first drive in a car, just got his license, borrowed his mother's car and was coming home. Says that he swerved to avoid a possum and rolled his mum's car right outside his own house. And the name has stuck ever since, because nobody actually believed that there was a possum anywhere in sight.
Possum's actually probably New Zealand's top resident rally driver. He competes overseas regularly. They've just come back from the East African Safari, where they found a new method of demisting the windscreen. They used Roger Freeth's hair shampoo on the windscreen to keep it from fogging up, and apparently it was very effective.
There's a tip for you motorists. 1:5.26. Possum's previous time, 1:5.28. That seems like about where he's going to sit. He's happy to settle for second to make a four-wheel drive. Ross Meeking's at the wheel from Hamilton. He's actually got quicker. He had 1:10 yesterday in the dry and came down to 9.74 in the wet this morning. Getting awfully wide there, Trevor, on the way up, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Those four-wheel drive cars, though, if you keep the power on and keep the wheels pointed in the right direction, they will sort of suck themselves back onto the road. The trick is to leave your foot on the throttle. I think the minute you back off, you're gone. But if you let them keep accelerating, they will drive back out of trouble.
On the way down and on good pace. Fairly experienced driver, Ross Meekings. He's always done round well in the international 1:10.08. So 1:10.16 earlier, about the same. This is Don Hickman, still on the way up in the Avenger with the four-wheel drive home build and the Leyland P76 4.4 litre V8 in it. Seems to be a good combination. Had some problems, which we'll tell you about in a minute, yesterday in qualifying. Got it repaired overnight. He's sharing the car with Steve Murphy.
39 to the top, which is a pretty effective time. You have to be under 40, I think, really, at this stage of the game to be doing the good times.
Don Hickman's background, a fair amount of dirt track racing, 4 years, in fact. So he won't be unhappy on the loose surface at all. That's looking like not a bad time. 1:7.62, that's fairly good. And Steve Murphy still to come in the same car. Kim Austin, the quickest of the two-wheel drive cars, the RX-7. Excellent 300-plus horsepower engine, 13B. Always drives very, very well at this sprint and has become very much a crowd favourite. And a favourite with the tally audience. They love the way he battles against the odds and against the four-wheel drive cars. Gets around that hairpin beautifully. The split's not all that quick, actually, 41.
Yes, he lost a lot of time at the start, Tony, just sort of getting out of the the start area, which is getting very slippery now and very deeply dug. I noticed he lost a lot of time just with wheel spin because of the two-wheel drive, basically.
And this is the fastest two-wheel drive car that's ever been at Ashley Forest Rally Sprint. .1808, and having a little bit of bother stopping. Manages to bring it straight and down to the line. Kim Austin of Waitakere. Of course, record holder, the quickest qualifier so far by still a long way. This morning he's back over a minute at 1:02, but he had 59.5 yesterday. Rod Mullen doesn't seem to worry about the wet. The car's still beautifully balanced, beautifully prepared, and extraordinarily well driven.
Notice in the in-car shot there's a piece of tape on the steering wheel at the top, and that's so they can work out the angle of the steering wheel when they're using pace notes. They have a certain amount of angle on the wheel for what they expect the corner to be. So a lot of these overseas drivers use this tape in the central position.
36.12's the split. That won't be far over a minute. It'd be amazing if he can get down here in a minute or under in the wet. He's certainly working harder than he was yesterday. I know he had hoped to get to 58 in this event this year.
Won't be today.
1:01.08. He's still 4 seconds clear of the field. One of the most likeable fellas that turns up here every year, Barry Robinson, always competes very well. It's a 2.3-litre Chevette, really an old hat car these days, with 2 big aerofoils. That's a view from inside. It does shield his vision just a little bit, getting awfully sideways.
The winged wonder, you could call it, couldn't you? Certainly different. This is a rather frightening bit of the circuit we're coming to now. As you go over that hill, the car gets very light, and then it's exceptionally fast down this next little straight and into this left-hander. It actually frightens most of the drivers, as it's the most dangerous part of the circuit.
Awfully close to the outside on that last little kink there. He did it all wrong at the top, and that really is not a bad recovery. 1:834 off that split is good. Dave Ailing from Inglewood in another of the Mazda 323 four-wheel drive turbos. The 2712 is the 1600 cc engine multiplied by 1.7 for the turbo factor. There's another of the very good national level and international level competitors in these little 323s. He hasn't actually gone for the Ray Wilson version of the big intercooler, but I don't think they're actually going to need it today. Turbos will be loving this cold weather.
Yes, the cold, damp conditions mean that the turbochargers work a lot better. So Dave was in our workshop during the week doing some changes to the car. You can see the bonnet flapping. That's a fiberglass bonnet they fitted on for this event because you're allowed to run lighter weight panels here.
That's another good run. 1:6.12 is Dave Ailey's in good nick this weekend. Steve Murphy has been up most of the night trying to repair this car. If you were watching television yesterday, you may have seen the bits and pieces of it strewn all over the track. They're not running a multi-plate clutch, and they blew the clutch that was in it really comprehensively, left pieces all over the circuit. And they had to fly some pieces down from Auckland, and they were very complimentary about Air New Zealand's service. They managed to get the parts down to them at 9 o'clock last night, and they worked past midnight putting it all together. They're back out and running. 2 drivers in the same car, and it seems to be running well. They've already had a couple of good times this morning. And once again, an example, as you were saying yesterday, Trevor, of Kiwi ingenuity and budget motor racing.
Yes, they've got some very strange parts to the car. There's a Datsun 180B diff in the front and a Wolseley diff in the back. It's got Mitsubishi Mirage axles in it. It's just really whatever they could get their hands on that was going to do the job and wasn't going to cost you much money. And it goes exceptionally well when you consider how it's been built.
They'll be followed by another very small budget runner in a moment. Let's see what he can do. The V8 powered Avenger, 1:764. Not too far off the pace, might be borderline. Turbo Trev from Timaru, Trev Parmenter, in a very, very unusual car. An old model, the first of the front drive 323s, and it's been completely re-engined, mid-mounted with a Skyline turbo and his own four-wheel drive system. runs laser struts all round. It's really is a compromise in every sense, but it's a formula that seems to have worked well for Trev. He reckons this car only owes him about $7,000. He's done most of the work himself and built a lot of the componentry. Very, very effective motor car.
It's just really as quick as the factory 323s at this sort of event, and it's probably about a quarter of the price of them. So it's good that these sort of cars are allowed to compete still in these events.
And look at that for a time. 1.642 is competitive. He's getting a little loose just at the end there, but nicely through the shingle trap and didn't do too much damage. We'll be back shortly, but in the meantime, back to you, Mark, in the studio. Might have had through the front windscreen by now. He came out safely, and 1.642 puts him in. Maintaining numerical order throughout the contest, right up until the final. So Ray Wilson's the first to go, number 9. The little 3.23. Qualifying time of 1.553. Just as a matter of interest, around a minute is 100 km/h average. If you've driven around here, I can tell you, maintaining 100 km/h average is pretty hot driving.
Second last year, and he'll be quite pleased with his split to the top. It was just a couple of seconds under the fourth.
Both he and Possum Bourne have conceded already today that it's a race for second place. Nobody expects to beat Rodney Mullen. 1.572. Well, pretty much the same yet. 1.553 now, 1.572. The Howdy 5-cylinder Quattro 4-wheel drive on the circuit. Malcolm Stewart, the 7th quickest into the round of 8 with 1.734. So on current form, everybody seems to be staying about the same. So you're going to need really better than 1.6, I think, to be in the semi.
37 to the top, good time. Should be very close to getting in.
That is a good split, isn't it?
It's excellent. Malcolm's been competing for 18 years, I think, in rallying. And he's done 14 World Championship rallies. Now, that's not a bad sort of an effort from him, New Zealand.
Pretty broad experience. Certainly been around a long time. 2 drivers, 1.476. Hey, that is an excellent improvement for Malcolm Stewart. He's on the pace here now. So with that challenge laid out by Malcolm Stewart, Possum Bourne on the track now is going to need to pick up the pace, as are Dave Ayling and Trev Parmenter. Neil Allport also in the 6s.
These guys now are making every corner count. Earlier on, you could just afford to qualify. Now you've got to definitely drive flat out every inch of the way, or you're not going to get through. 38 to the top's a good time. Be marginal. He'll really have to do it properly all the way down to get in.
That's actually on recent form. That 38 split is 5s, 105 on the way down. So you need an awfully quick downhill to match Malcolm Stewart. 4.97, so just under the 5s. Oh, the pace is hotting up. Last year's winner, Possum Bourne. One of the 2 Avenger drivers got through, Don Hickman, who was the 8th fastest qualifier into the round, with a time of 1.760. Now, I can tell you that the time he'll need to beat to get through from here is 1.502. Because even though we've only had 3 runners, we assume Rod Mullen will be quicker than the 1.4s, as he has been all day. So 1.502, I'm saying, at the moment, is the cut-off point.
Where these sort of home-built cars have a bit of a disadvantage is normally in the suspension and maybe in the tyres, but particularly in the suspension, where they don't have the clever sort of gas shock absorbers, as they call them, that the more works-type cars do. And a lot of these guys just plain can't afford to keep on bolting on new tyres, which really you need to do here. Even in the wet, it still helps to have those little sharp edges on the tyres. Very wide there, unfortunately.
He's lost a little bit of time on the downhill. And he might just be outside. He's going to be too slow. Assuming, of course, Rod Mullen's on his normal form. I think Don Hickman has just gone out with that 1.644. Just settling himself into the grooves there at the start, right on the start line. Rod Mullen with his son Reese navigating, and he's already been close to it. And still 1:05.02, the time to beat to get to the next round. Just so smooth the way he drives up here, Rod Mullen. And his car so beautifully balanced. The weight distribution is just about perfect. Space framed.
Built on an RX-7, his own design and build, the whole thing. Peripheral port 13B, 300 plus horsepower, carbureted, no turbo. 35.62. Good gracious me, that is quick. That's a super split.
That puts him on target for under a minute. Be phenomenal to watch that in the wet. Let's have a look. Can he do it? No, he can't. 1:00.98. So Rodney Mullen still the quickest qualifier by almost 4 seconds. And that puts Don Hickman out. Neil Allport needs to beat 1:05.02 to stay in contention here. And I suspect to do better than that. Still Dave Ailing and Trev Parmenter to come. So I think he needs to be in the mid-1.4s to be in contention. We have 1:04.97, 1:04.78, and 1:05.02 outside of, apart from Rodney Mullen's 1:00.98, of course, which is still the quickest time.
These Neil Allport and the guys that do a lot of rallies in New Zealand have some advantage over the hill climb specialists that just come and do hill climbs, because when you drive these rally cars a lot, you do get a better feel for what's going to happen every time you get in the car. 38 to the top, not too bad. And you know, you get Trev Parmenter, who sits in his car much less often and only does these sort of specialised events. And he was saying earlier that it's really quite hard just to get in and go flat out straight away when you're not doing the mileage. Great shots from in the car there.
There's the time to beat. And 1:04.88 puts him in at the moment, but it's going to be borderline high fours. He won an 83. Is he going to stay in now? Dave Ailing now ready to go. Ray Wilson is out, and Possum Bourne is under threat. Possum Bourne's time of 1:04.97, the time to beat to get through to the next round. So last year's runner-up is already out, and last year's winner looking under some threat. Dave Ailing here in the 323 four-wheel drive turbo. It's another having a good consistent season, and he's done better at this event this year than ever previously. Seems to have got to grips with the circuit very well indeed yesterday and today. We'll have a look at his split at the top. He wants better than 38, really.
I think that's cost him. He was very wide there. Just wasn't nice and tidy. I was talking to him earlier, and he said that he tries to fire the car into that corner because he thinks it's quicker instead of just driving around it. And it didn't work that time, and I'd say that was pretty well fatal for a quick time. And very wide there. So you can sort of tell from home watching the television whether it's going to be any good or not. If they're not on the right line, they're not going to do a good time.
And he's out. 1:05.96. Having some difficulty stopping there, Dave Ailing. Hard luck for him for continuation, and Possum Bourne lives again. Just having a look at that piece at the top that he got all wrong. 38.74 was really too slow in terms of the split, and then he lost it by getting too wide and not being able to get the traction back again and get on course for the downhill. Hard luck for Dave Ailing. Trev Parmenter, can he hold it all together in this run? He's been on excellent pace. He's had a 1:06.42 into this round. He needs to take some time off it. That wasn't a very tidy run. There were a couple of mistakes in it. I think he can get down to the mid-fours, and it is still Possum Bourne's time of 1:04.97 that is under threat. So at the moment, Rod Mullen's in. Dave Ailing's out. Neil Allport is just in. Ray Wilson's gone out, so it's all changing at the top end. all things being equal, there's no question Millen's going to win it. 37.4 is a good split. And he could be down on the mid-4s here.
Remember, this car, although it's a Mazda 323, it has a rear engine four-wheel drive. Oh, that's cost him. Very wide, very untidy. The pressure comes on late in these in the day with these runs, and it's very easy to make a mistake. Usually self-induced because you're so aware of the need to get a good time out.
And he's outside of the time. Confirm the next round for you in just a moment. But certainly Trev Parmenter won't be amongst them. And that was really where he got it all wrong. Had to get off the gas momentarily, tail getting wide, just wasn't clean enough to be in that quick time. And the interesting points about the semi-finalists are that they're all in four-wheel drive cars, all the cars are different, and 3 of the 4 have won the event before. Rod Mullen still nearly 4 seconds clear of the field. Back in just a minute, Malcolm Stewart first to run, his time 1:4.76 into this round. He in fact was the second quickest qualifier behind Rod Mullen. And the Audi Quattro sounding very, very good indeed. He's really found a way to wind the wick up this event today, hasn't he? Better than we've seen him go for years.
Yes, I think he's proving a point, really, because a lot of people probably didn't expect him to be up this far in the field. And yesterday, he really gave no indication this was going to happen. But, of course, overnight, they found this other 100... Ooh, that was a little too wide. The extra 100 horsepower, and they're using every bit of it today. He is very loose. I'm not sure if that's quick or not. Maybe it's still working for him. Let's see what the split time... Oh, yes, not too bad. But a little slow out of the top corner.
Yeah, I think the reasonably quick split was actually lost on the exit. But you never know. In the semis, only 4 runners. Probably one of the quickest too.
Because the pressure's on, it is still easy for everybody to make a mistake. Although I don't see Rod Mullen make very many.
1:5.12 is respectable, not as quick as his last round, but as Trevor said, the pressure is really on. 3 to come. Possible on now. Nice high wide helicopter shot there, brief view for you. Last year's winner. Got the Subaru wound up. Very much a special, this Subaru, built for the event. Lightened panels and some extra horsepower. 1:04.96 in the last round. An improvement would see him in at this stage. The only time recorded, 1:05.12 for Malcolm Stewart.
Possum, once again, is one of those drivers that does do a lot of mileage, so he's very familiar with what the car's going to do. And on these events, you know, where every little second counts, it's probably an advantage to be a sort of semi-professional like, well, he's a fully professional driver, really. 38 doesn't seem quick enough.
It's not a good split, but he has actually done good times off poor splits before. It seems to be relatively quick downhill, the Subaru. Possum, of course, just fresh back from the Africa Safari Rally, where he didn't have a great deal of luck. I think this is going to be slightly off, 1:05.12 to beat 1:04.50, but is it going to be quick enough to beat Mullen and Allport? Here is the top corner. Now that wasn't a particularly quick split. I think that the split was actually indicated before he got to the corner, and the exit wasn't all that quick either. I think that's something that Bourne may regret. Let's see what Mullen and Allport can do. Rod Mullen on the line. The time to beat at the moment is 1:05.12, and I suspect it will become 1:04.50 very quickly. Mullen has still not been able to break that minute in the wet. He's been awfully close to it. Will we see it this time? Certainly it's been a target for him. I know he was telling us the day before yesterday that he really thought 58 was possible. That was, of course, before we saw the rain. But the times haven't slowed off that much, so I think it'll be a real challenge to Rod Mullen to break that minute mark, and he's been awfully close brushing with it, hasn't he?
Yes, he has. Actually, we were just talking about whether Rod Mullen makes mistakes, and it's very hard to remember for all the years of rallying any time that he's had a serious problem. Can you remember one time?
No, in the 17-odd years that I've known him, I can think of 3 crashes that he's had, and they've been in the States in the middle of nowhere on roads that really caused the problem. In this kind of thing, no. I do not remember a single major error, let alone a crash.
35 was his time to the top, which is very quick.
Can he do it? Can he do it? No, he can't. 101.76 makes the cut-off now. 1.450. Possum Bourne on the line once again, as Millen does a 101.76. Rod Millen is one finalist at the moment. It's down to Possum Bourne or Neil Allport for the other position. Malcolm Stewart is out. The time to beat at the moment is 104.50, which is Possum Bourne's. Can Neil Allport do it on the course now? Perhaps worth pointing out, while we've got all 4-wheel drive cars in the semis, that the prize for the quickest 2-wheel drive car went to Kim Austin, who had a 1:08.09, and he beat Barry Robinson for that title. So they were off the pace slightly, the 2-wheel drive cars, and not surprisingly in the wet it's been 4-wheel drive territory. So Neil Allport with a 1:04.88. He needs to improve on that to stay in. He's good under pressure.
Neil has really 38 to the top. He doesn't look quite quick enough. Let's see. Neil has really matured over the last few years. He used to crash or roll every time he came down and did the Canterbury Rally over the years, but this year he did it exceptionally well. The rally, of course, was last weekend, and most of the drivers stayed down for this event.
There's the time, top left, that he has to beat to get in the final with Rod Millen. And he's not going to do it. 1:5.04, so the 2 finalists are Rod Millen and last year's winner, Possum Bourne. There's confirmation of it, and Millen will run second by virtue of his quicker time under the regulations here. Down to the final. Possum Bourne goes first because Rod Millen's time was quicker. He won it last year. He knows he is off Millen's pace all day. He said to us earlier he would be very happy with second place. He's realistic enough to know that he's not going to match wits in terms of round the minute mark. He thought that a 1:04 was about as quick as he would get this thing around here, even on a good day. So he's done very well, in fact, to pull it into the 1.4s. This is where the pressure's really on, though. He's got to set a time, and I guess the only thing you can hope for is that Rod Millen makes a huge mistake, which he's not known for doing. But what Possum's got to do, being the first runner, is first and foremost post a time, and then try and make that time competitive.
Yes, I think the natural competitive urge of a driver is to go hard anyway. I mean, he could settle for second or he could try very hard, and I think he's just naturally going to go as hard as he can without going off the road.
37.76, not a bad split for Possum. He gets down fairly quick off those splits, but it's still not going to be much better than the 4s.
It looks a little bit like a play it safe run. It probably isn't, but he's certainly not taking too many errors.
It's a good quick downhill of 1.4.16. And that, as he has said from the outset, is about as quick as he can get this car round there. One of New Zealand's very few professional drivers, Possum Bourne, co-driving with Dr. Roger Freeth, and that's a relatively easy target on form for Rod Millen to beat. He looks pretty relaxed, Rod Millen, and I would think that he'd be very confident of being able to win this event now. He needs to run better than 1:04.16. He's been better than that. In fact, he's never been that slow since the outset. He was under a minute yesterday in the dry. He's been consistently just over the minute today in the wet. As you can see from that inside car shot, he takes virtually the same line almost exactly.
Yes, I think the surface is actually, if anything, getting slower rather than faster as the rain is sort of digging its way into the surface. Not a particularly good exit out of the hairpin, but still obviously on course for those sort of 1-minute runs that he's been producing.
That's going to be, I'll punt and say that's 1:01 off the split. The exit wasn't particularly good out of the hairpin, not as good as some of his earlier ones. Just over the minute. Coming down to it now 101.30. Not as quickest run of the day by any means, but quick enough to beat Boston Born and to win the 1990 Dunlop Ashley Forest Rally Sprint. Rod Mullen, now resident in California, co-driven by his son Reese, being congratulated by the organisers, reading the time, and that's quick enough.
58 seconds was never going to be possible today, was it?
Not today. Far too slippery today. You had to have a lot of respect for the road.